Welcome back, my dear students. In this occasion we are going to continue with section 1.7, midpoint and distance in the coordinate plane. If we remember, the previous objective was for us to find midpoint of a segment, which we did in the previous video, and in this video we are continuing now with problem number 2, finding an endpoint. In this situation we have a problem where we were giving the midpoint coordinates and one of the endpoints. As you can see in the problem here, we have the midpoint, which is given, and we have one of the endpoints, but we are missing one of the endpoints, the endpoint for the coordinate for the endpoint D. So for the segment CD, we have the midpoint and we have the coordinate for the endpoint C, which will represent this one, but we're missing the coordinate for the endpoint D, which will be this one, right? So we need to work out a formula. How do we do? The first thing we need to do is pay close attention to our midpoint, okay, and the formula that we learned for midpoint, okay, in the previous video. We need two coordinates to find the coordinates of D, the coordinates representing X and the coordinates representing Y, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is divide our work in two parts. One where we're going to solve for X and the other one where we're going to solve for Y, okay? So keeping that in mind, we're going to start with the coordinate, the midpoint coordinate. If we see, the midpoint coordinate for X was 2, minus 2. So we're going to copy minus 2 equal the formula that we learned for midpoint, which is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. In the following step, we are going to repeat the same. We only going to replace now the value that we already know for x1. The x1 is the only point that we know, the only endpoint that we know the coordinate for x. That is will be for the point C. So we use then that coordinate for x that we have, plus the other coordinate would be the one related to D point, which we do not know. So in this case, we're going to leave the x, okay, as the variable that we're trying to solve. Applying what we learned in algebra, we have now an equation. So we are going to move everything that is in my way on the right side of this equation, so I can have the value of x by itself, and that will be my value for my x coordinate for D, okay? So what we're going to do, 2 here is dividing. We're going to pass it to the other side of the equation with the opposite operation, which in this case is going to go from division to multiplication. So minus 2 times 2, right? We're going to have then minus 5 plus x2. In this case now, we are going to move minus 5 to the other side of the equation. Remember, my main objective is to find the value of x, so I need to leave it alone. So minus 5 is in my way. So I'm going to multiply here, and this is going to give me minus 4. Okay, and I'm going to move this minus 5 to the other side of the equation. Then it will have to pass with the opposite operation. So the opposite from subtraction will be addition. So it will pass to the other side, adding. Okay, that will leave me now with x2 on this side. These two here, minus 4 and positive 5, have opposite signs. These are two integers that are going to subtract each other because they have opposite signs. So in this case, the difference will be 1, and because 5 is positive as the one with the greatest absolute value, on this side we're going to have that x has the value of 1. On the other side now, we are going to continue working to find the value of y for the coordinate of D. Okay, we are going to start again with the midpoint. Here we can see that the midpoint had a value of 1 positive. So we're going to use the midpoint as the first value. And then we're going to use the same formula for midpoint, but in this case now for coordinates y. Okay, and now I'm going to replace the value that I know for the first point, which is c, related to y, which in this case would be 7. Okay, coordinate y2 I do not know, because that would be in relative to point D, which I do not know. Then I continue. Now again, I have an equation that I can solve using my algebra skills. So now remember again, this 2 is dividing. It passes to the other side with the opposite operation, which will be multiplication. So you will have 1 times 2. And then 7 will be on this side. 7 will be on this side, and y2 is my variable that I need to find the value for. So now 7 is in my way of leaving y2 alone. So 7 is positive, so it's adding. I'm going to pass it to the other side of the equation with the opposite operation from addition, and that is subtraction. Now I do this little multiplication that's going on here, right? And that will be 1 times 2, that is 2. And then I move my 7 to the other side of the equation, so it goes from adding to subtracting. And now I have y2 on its own alone, which is my main objective. Now positive 2 and negative 7 have opposite signs, so there is a subtraction going on between them with the sign, the negative sign remaining, because 7 has the greatest absolute value. So then this way I found the value for y. So now I have finally discovered the value of the coordinates for D. The value of the coordinates for D are, on the x-axis is 1, and on the y-axis it's -5. Okay, so these are the coordinates of the endpoint that was missing. Remember, the main objective in this problem was to find the endpoint that was missing, that was D. We found it using what? The midpoint, the formula for midpoint, and then replacing the values of the point with the coordinates that we have for the endpoint that we know. Okay, so remember to practice and do the homework related to the section 1.7, and continue to practice every day so in class we can go faster. Okay, take care. Bye.